Welcome to the Martinus Cosmology Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the works of the Danish spiritual writer Martinus. My name is Mary McGovern and I'm your host for today. And today I have a co-host, Pernilla Rosell, who's joining us. And our guest for today is Sören Grind. Sören Grind is a psychologist from Sweden. He's also the author of 4 books, and he's a lecturer here at the Martinus Center in Klint, Denmark, where we're recording this podcast. Welcome, Søren.
Thank you, Mary.
And we've invited you because for the first time, one of your 4 books has been translated into English.
Yes.
And it came out a few weeks ago, translated by Pernilla, with support from, Pernilla is Swedish, but she had support from 2 native speakers, Sören and Pernilla in Florida, United States, and Colleen Turozzi in England. So congratulations on your first book in English.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will celebrate that with this podcast and try to convey something of the book's content. So the book is called Reincarnation, a logical and loving perspective on life. Søren, what got you interested in the idea of reincarnation?
Yes, it's a long history of many lifetimes. No, I guess it was. I'm grown up in Sweden, as you said, and it's in a secularized family, but it is a Christian culture, and so I didn't think so much about spiritual topics in my childhood. But I remember when I was in the elementary school, we learned about religions. And I thought, well, these different religions, I guess maybe reincarnation is the most plausible theory about what happens after death. So that was the first reflection about reincarnation. And then I was an exchange student in Texas. And there I met a very Christian, strongly religious culture. But I didn't really get the inspiration from the old religious traditions. I love the teachings about Jesus and neighborly love. But for me, it was a very good person, but I didn't really become religious of that period. In fact, I also, when I came back to Sweden, was kind of satiated by the religious traditions and was more up to science and politics and so on. But when I came home, my brother Eric had started to read Martinus' works. So he was a little bit strange in his lifestyle, a changed lifestyle, become a vegetarian, and I thought it was a little bit funny. So I had to start ask questions to him. And the first topic that really we talked about was reincarnation. And there I started to see there is a logical explanation by reincarnation. It could easily also be connected with the evolutionary theory of Darwin and so on. There's no opposition in that. It fits well in.
No conflict.
No conflict. No. So there I started to integrate a beginning of a spiritual worldview. And reincarnation was in fact very important for me as a start. And then, if I can continue there, I started to read psychology at the university in Lund. And there I had started to think in spiritual terms about life and reincarnation. And there I meet a psychology that is based on a one-life theory. And that's where I started to get this inspiration. How can I combine the spiritual worldview and reincarnation with psychology? So that has been the inspiration behind my writings, you could say.
If you look back at your experience as a psychologist, because you have been working as a psychologist for many years, what do you think a spiritual worldview can offer that perhaps you can't get answers if you adapt a more traditional psychology?
I guess the main answer to this question is meaning, purpose. Because if you have a materialistic worldview and you think that the consciousness is a product of the brain and you die when you die, it's very hard to find a purpose, a meaning when being here. And we have such a long tradition of getting so many good results and answers when studying matter, the physical matter. We have now this fantastic, we sit here with computers, we have warm in our houses, and we have airplanes and so on. And we have medical, hospitals and so on. You can make fantastic operations on people in illnesses. So we have so much gratitude towards the materialistic knowledge that has helped us in many ways. But the big questions of life, where do we come from, where are we heading, and what's the purpose, and where is my mother now when she's dead? All these questions that gives meaning and purpose in your life, they are very hard to get a good answer to in the materialistic worldview. So for me, the question of consciousness has become so important. And to understand that consciousness is so much more than sitting in the brain produced by molecules.
Yeah, you also have this headline in your book, your chapter 2, consciousness remains a great enigma. It's a mystery. And it seems to be something that's hard to grasp in a way. I mean, even if we talk about what is consciousness, we can't really see it, can we? Can we measure it? That's what some people think. But what is it? Is it our memories, our thoughts? What is consciousness?
That's a big question. And as you say, we don't have possibilities to sense it, and we cannot measure it. But we know that there is an electricity in our brain and in our body. And we know from, when we see the films of people at the hospital and then suddenly there's a flat line. And he's dead. He's gone. And that's from our point of seeing and sensing, they are gone from our world. But what was that electricity in the body? And from one point of view, you can say this electricity is a life force. And when the life force disappears out of the brain and the body, you cannot just conclude that they are definitely gone or have vanished into nothing. You can just say that the connection between the electrical part of consciousness and the physical body is
you've lost the connection.
You've lost the connection. And if my computer doesn't have energy, it also becomes blank, and there's no purpose with using it. So,
and we've seen in recent years an increasing amount of research into things like near-death experiences and childhood memories that could imply reincarnation, all that kind of research into psychic phenomena.
Yes.
So how do you combine that scientific research with this spiritual view of reincarnation? Do you find it backs it up or supports it in some way?
Absolutely. So the first chapter in this book is mainly going through these different types of experiences and signs that shows that there's something behind the physical curtain, so to say. And I think very, very important knowledge, really growing body of knowledge on the whole planet today is all these reports about near-death experiences. And some people say, well, it's only anecdotes, But if the anecdotes become a pearl of anecdotes and it becomes more and more, it's not only anecdotes, it's data for science to go into. And that's what many scientists today have done. They have really look at this data and see that there are common threads in all around the world from different cultures. People experience the same. And I think a very, very key knowledge from these studies is the fact that people report facts from that has happened in the operation room where people are operated, and even outside of where their body was lying, they can tell things happening when they had this flat line. They were clinically dead, and they can report what the doctors said and what they did, and they can even report what relatives at home were doing. So if we have a lot of these data from around the world that tells us that you can experience outside of the body, that consciousness is more than the brain. In fact, I think that is enough to say that the materialistic worldview is dead, because life is conquering death when you see these reports from all these people that can report experiences outside of the brain.
Because I think it's now about 50 years ago since Raymond Moody published his book on near-death experiences, in a way coined the concept, the name, at least made it popular.
Yes.
So if we look at those 50 years, what do you think is the most important result now? You talked about data. Do you think that we actually are witnessing a shift of paradigm right now?
I think we are, but it's not a quick change. But there are so many people today that are in this borderland and are open for the spiritual worldview. Many people say today, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. And they open up for there is something. And I think a very, very important consequence of all these studies and all these reports about near-death experiences is also that people today who have near-death experiences, they can understand that I'm not alone. Because you go out on YouTube and people, you can hear reports from people had these near-death experiences 50 years ago. They couldn't talk about it because when they talked with their doctor, they just said it's a hallucination. When they came home and talked about it, it's something from the devil, maybe from religious people could say. So now when it has been more and more a common fact for people, and when they have this experience, they can easily get knowledge about it. It's a fantastic help for people to be open about it. And I guess it has a spin-off effect to other people having out-of-body experiences and people reincarnation memories and so on, that there is a growing body of knowledge about it is kind of a natural thing that you can experience outside of the brain. I think that's a very, very healing force for people. Let me take the example with this fantastic book, After, by Bruce Grayson. Where he says the title of his book, that also is about 50 years process that he has been in studying this field. The title is because people after their near-death experience, they are changed in a very good way. They have no fear of death. And when they have no fear of death, they are convinced that you survive death, then you usually release a lot of the fear of life. So you live your life much more fully. He also describes in that book the people that had to commit suicide. When they come back, they have no impulse, most of them, to make a new effort in spite of having a very nice experience on the spiritual side. The first thought you could say, oh, why don't they go back when they had such a good life on the other side? But in the opposite, they are so keen of taking care of the experiences of life here on earth because they see purpose, they say meaning. And I guess that's your question, what can we learn from a spiritual aspect of psychology? Well, it's so much about meaning and purpose in your life. And when you release all these thoughts and feelings of death, fear of death, you live your life much more fully. So after is for them who had the experience themselves. But the interesting thing is, he says that people that study near-death experiences, they also get a similar effect, not so strong, but also. And also the relatives or the people, the friends and so on, with the person having near-death experiences, they are also influenced by this release of fear of death, and it makes them live their life more fully. And that's why I also think when psychology will be inspired by a spiritual worldview, and it will be integrated in a more careful and logical way, then we will see that the therapeutic work will also influence the clients in a more trustful way and can easily help people with fear of death and so on. So I think it has a crucial purpose that we now get this spiritual worldview in a more scientific way. The spiritual science can influence it, be integrated in psychology and therapeutic work.
I think one can infer in Bruce Grayson's book that you mentioned, he's a psychiatrist, but also your own experience, that this effect that one experience has on a person's life is very impressive, especially considering that it's normally a long and time-consuming process to change your attitude to life.
Yes, as a psychotherapist, you are used to have a process, or sometimes many years, to help people come out of childhood traumas and so on. So it could take some time to go through these changes, and of course, it's kind of mind-blowing to see a person go through a near-death experience, maybe some minutes, and they make this big shift, and they have a much better life. And you say, oh, if I could just find that method into my clinic. So I guess, and I think most people that really go into spiritual science and get both the logical and the loving perspective of life, they gradually feel a similar process, but it's a more gradual process than a near-death experience.
Yes. Yeah, I've met that here, that, for example, a person who was on a 1-year intensive course, she sort of concluded the course by saying, well, 2 things have happened. One is I've become a vegetarian, and the other is I've lost my fear of dying. So there were big things.
Fantastic result.
That was the result of a lot of study and not a sudden experience. But you get these sudden experiences through near-death experiences.
Yes.
And I thought that the number of reports of near-death experiences is increasing and increasing.
Yes.
And I think it's partly due to medical technology, because resuscitation came into the picture in the 60s, I think. And cardiologists like Pim van Lommel, who wrote a book, I just can't remember the name of it, about, was it Consciousness Beyond Life or something? And but because they began to be able to resuscitate people, they began to get reports of what they had experienced while they'd been dead, so to speak. And there were so many of these stories. So he found it worthy of scientific investigation and wrote this book on the topic. And it changed him, just like you say.
That's interesting.
You could see how it changed his view of life.
Yes. We have an interview at Martinus Institute's YouTube channel.
In English.
in English, where Jens Christian Hermansson is interviewing Pim from Lommel. And it's very interesting to see, as you say, how it has changed his life too.
Yes, we can put a link to that in the show notes.
And I think it's also interesting with this, your experience with this participant in your 1-year course, because I often say here, spiritual science, we don't, when we teach it, it's not a therapeutic work we are doing, but it has a therapeutic effect.
Yeah.
And I think it's also natural, if it is a fact that we are these eternal beings that reincarnate, then it is a structure within us. And we have this saying about know thyself. And self-awareness is really so important to live a good life. And there's another dimension of self-awareness, to be aware of your eternal being, your eternal structure. It's a healing in another level. It's one thing to heal traumas and so on in life, or conflicts you are in relationships. That's fantastic. We can do that in spite of whatever word you have. But it's another type of healing, learning to know your own self and your own eternal dimension. You get the fixed point that is above all change. And to learn to know that in you and in life, to see that there's a divine aspect of life that is eternal, it's also a healing thing to understand that, because it is true, so to say, that we are these eternal beings. So,
don't you think too that it can make you more forgiving of yourself? For example, if you're trying to develop a talent for something, but you're not as good as the other people around you, and it can be very, very frustrating. But if you understand something like that in an eternal perspective, in the perspective of several lives, my experience at least is that they can make you more patient and think, okay, well, this person's been practicing for more lives than I have, or so they are ahead of me.
Yes.
But I'm on the same path, but maybe better than some, but not as good as others, and it's a continuum. So I think there's so much talk about talent as being such a mystery, and where does it come from, and so on.
Yes.
But reincarnation, for me at least, solves that mystery of talents and prodigies and all that kind of thing.
And also, if you learn to know that there is a part of you that is eternal, then you also know, and that you reincarnate, then you, as you say here about talents, you don't compare yourself in the same way, because you know my value is not what I do in the physical world right now. I have an eternal value for being this eternal being, and a divine being connected with life around me. And we have different roles in different lifetimes, and we are developing, all of us, in a way that we will come back to, is really heading for a more humane state of consciousness.
Yeah, and perhaps it could be good for those who might be new to Martinus' world picture, and because you call your book Reincarnation, so that's the focus. But you mention in your book that there are different traditions of the idea of reincarnation, and some people might find it confusing. I remember reading a near-death experience, very famous by Anita Moriani. And if I remember correctly, she said that she was surprised when she met her father in her near-death experience, that he looked like her father. He spoke like her father, he looked like her father. It was, and that might have been sort of contrary to what she had expected, due to her thoughts of reincarnation, what that meant. So could you summarize what is Martinus' view of reincarnation? How can we understand that?
Yes. Maybe you could divide these different views of reincarnation into two groups. One where this eternal part can move around from different types of organisms. You hear from some traditions in India, for example, that you could, if you don't behave really good in this lifetime, you may be born as a snake, for instance. And the theory that Martinus describes for us, and that seems much more logical for me, is that there is a part of our eternal consciousness that continues. So our personality doesn't vanish with the body. It's not in the body. We are these personalities without the body. So when she meets the Father, of course, he's him. He, with his personalities and his talents and so on. So if we look at the day and night cycle, we see that we go to bed, we wake up in the morning, and then we live and we'll make experiences, and then we go to sleep, and it keeps on like that. And we know from experience from day and night cycle that from every day there's a plus. We gather more and more experiences. And it's a continuous process, a continuous growth. And that's the way I understand the reincarnation theory by Martinus, description by Martinus, that we have this continuous process, and it fits very well with the evolutionary theory. It's a question of evolution. And there's a very optimistic aspect of that, because what we also see is that all the suffering that people go through in different lifetimes is also accumulated and creates a body of knowledge of suffering that makes you more compassionate. So if we look at history, if we've been much more brutal in the Viking period here in Scandinavia, and we become less and less violent, in fact, if you go through the history. And we create more and more with hospitals and taking care, and NGOs that people going down also to Gaza and helping with hospitals, even though they have nearly sacrificed their own life. Many do it, in fact. So there's an urge, a longing to help people that suffer. And we know that from everyday life, that if I've gone through an illness, and a serious illness, it's much easier for me to identify and understand that person. So in that sense, you could see that there's a growth of humane capacity in every being. So gradually we'll see what we are heading for, a more humane way of living in a peaceful world. We are not there yet, as we see around the world today, but so many people feel that it's kind of insane with wars. We need to do it in another way. So we are in a big shift there.
So that's what explains that we are so different.
Yes. We also come from different cultures in past lifetimes. Maybe I have been in India, for instance. I have got some sayings about that from people. And that's maybe why it was natural for me to connect with the reincarnation thought. If you come from a more Christian culture, maybe where you have been thinking many lifetimes, maybe about only one lifetime, maybe another process to grasp and understand these thoughts about reincarnation. So that's just one area where we have different backgrounds.
Yeah, for me, when I started reading Martinus, one of the first ideas I met was this idea of reincarnation. And suddenly the whole of Christianity made sense.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
Because I was brought up in Catholicism, and we learned that God is all-loving, and Christ died on the cross to save us. And, at that time I couldn't understand, well, are we saved? What does it mean that mankind is saved? And at that time there was a war in Vietnam and hunger and starvation in Biafra. And I said, is mankind saved? And if we are saved, how did dying on the cross achieve that? Yeah, I was thrown out of the class for blasphemy just for asking the question. So, but when I read Martinus' interpretation of the idea of reincarnation, I thought, now it makes sense. Now everything falls into place. Then God could be all-loving, even though some people are dying in Vietnam and others are dying of starvation, and others are poor and others are handicapped and others are very happy or very rich and others are lonely and others have too many people around them. So all this apparent unfairness in the world just disappeared.
Yes.
Because anyone can have a bad day. But well, I'll go to sleep tonight and hopefully I'll have a better day tomorrow. And we can build on our daily experiences.
Yes.
And Martinus' way of explaining reincarnation is very like that we can have a life where maybe we're poor, cold, in wars, no opportunity to develop various talents and so on. But it's like one bad day in a whole series of days. And for me, it saved the whole of not just Christianity, but all the humane world religions. I mean, how could there be a loving God if this was the only life we had? You tell a child in Gaza today, well, okay, you've lost your arms and legs. God is loving. Without the theory of reincarnation,
it's hard.
It would be very, very hard.
Yes.
And cynical. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Mary, I think you were in a way prepared for reincarnation thought because of your own experiences. In fact, I got the opportunity to use an example here in this book. The person is called Mary.
Yeah, I have to admit it's me.
And that's, I think it's such a wonderful story just to show that our consciousness can also have memories. You don't see it maybe as a memory, but you can experience it as a memory of something you don't know what it is. Well, how can I experience this? Will you tell us the story?
Yeah, I was 16 or 17. I went to school in a Catholic convent. We were taught by nuns, mostly. And my last 2 years in school, from I was 16 to 18, then I was part of a little religious group called the Pioneers. And one of our functions was to support an enclosed convent, a Carmelite convent nearby. The Carmelites never left the building, so to speak. They were cut off from society. So, but we had this little connection that we brought them gifts, and we supported them in various ways, brought them food sometimes. And I and 2 other friends, we were sent to this convent to deliver some gifts to the Carmelites. And they're not allowed to show themselves or come out, so when you ring the doorbell, there's a little window with a grate on it, and the nun behind the grate, she opened this little wooden door so we could see a very small part of her face, like just from the eyes to the mouth. And she thanked us for the gifts and said we should leave them there, and she would pick them up when we left. But in the moment she opened that wooden door behind the grate, I saw with my mind's eye the whole convent. I saw the chapel with all the lights, the candles and the lights, the candelabra, and I saw the cells where the nuns lived. I saw the corridors. I saw the gardens out in the back, and the nuns I could feel the dirt underneath my fingernails because they made a lot of their own food. They grew their food. And I thought, I know this convent in and out. And all I could see was this part of a nun's face, but I could see the whole convent. And it was really terrifying. I was really freaked out and sort of ran away from the place.
Yes.
And I had no thoughts of reincarnation at that time. And then sometime later, we went there again to deliver some gifts, and I got the same experience. And totally freaked out again. I didn't think about reincarnation, but it could be some kind of reincarnation memory. And I know when I see films about nuns and so on, and I know that life. I know it in detail. I know it in the core of my being. So I've always been fascinated by films about nuns. And so it could be a kind of subconscious memory of a previous life. And the funny thing is, now it was a Carmelite convent. My middle name is Carmel.
Yes.
I thought that was really,
No
really
coincidence.
weird, and it's not that common a name. It's
No.
used a lot in Ireland. It comes from Israel. It comes from Our Lady of Mount Carmel. It's the mountain from which the Virgin Mary ascended into heaven when she died. So, coincidences, I don't believe in coincidence, but
No.
a funny meeting of different events. So,
Yes.
which could be a kind of reincarnation memory, but
I think it's very hard to explain it in another way.
yeah. I mean, I don't think you could explain it with a very vivid imagination.
No. And also this.
I could almost draw the chapel, you know, I
Yes.
could, and the way the lights hung and the candles
Yes.
and
And you can sense it in your fingers and
I could even sense
smell.
very coarse woolen underwear and so on.
Yes, yes.
It was like
yes.
I was part of it.
Mhm.
And also the effect it had on you is interesting, I think.
I
The
haven't
effect
forgotten.
that you said it freaked you out. Of course,
Yeah.
it might be
Yeah.
that it was so vivid, but it seems to have affected some feelings.
Yes, and I think maybe the way was being prepared to meet a logical explanation of life and a cosmology that embraced every facet of life, which I think Martinus and analysis do, if I'm allowed to say that. So,
And I think that's also a very good example of how much it could mean for persons in general. If you have these experiences that you cannot explain with the materialistic worldview, and there are so many different types,
yeah,
telepathy and
Yeah.
different psychic capacities people have and so on. And then you, as you said, you were terrified because you couldn't, it didn't fit in your worldview.
no,
And as soon as it fits in your worldview, it's a release, a relief. You
Yeah.
feel, oh,
Yeah.
okay, now I understand. And I guess that's an experience I think many people have studying spiritual science and have this broader perspective of life, that when things come into a pattern, when it becomes logical, and even you can feel loving in a way because all experiences have help you to grow as a human being. It can really help people in a therapeutic way, you could say, to release old memories that you can't understand, or aspects of yourself that you can't understand.
It's very moving to hear about your experience, but most people don't, at least don't consciously have memories of past lives. You could, of course, speculate a lot about what happened, and is this because I was a bad person in my last life? You could use it in many different ways, but how can it be really helpful and healing, the knowledge that we have had previous lives?
Well, I guess the whole, as you said, people can think about, oh, if I have a bad karma, I have done something bad before, and so on. That's an old way of looking at this process with the reincarnation and karma. The conclusion of this worldview is that everything we experience has a purpose to make us more aware of life and to become more compassionate and more intellectual and more artistic and so on. So everything is helping us, and that makes you start to think differently about your fate. You start to think, okay, it's a learning process. So instead of thinking what I've done, I've been a bad person, you think, okay, something is teaching me something. How can I use this knowledge to be a better version of myself, to grow as a person? So the focus on what can I learn from these experiences will be the interesting relation to your fate, you could say, or constructive way of relating to your fate.
And do you also have experience that it has helped people in your experience as a psychologist?
Yes, absolutely. I do not teach reincarnation or spiritual worldview to my clients, but sometimes clients come to me that are open or interested on that aspect and knows that I have that perspective. And absolutely I see that it is really a factor of healing when you see purpose and meaning with your suffering. You could say to every person, despite of what worldview they have, that if they ask, because that's a question even the most materialistic person have when they go through suffering, they ask why. And that's not logical to ask if you have a materialistic worldview, but they do it anyway. So sometimes the clients, also materialistic clients, ask, why do I have to go through this? And then I have to have the balance to answer this question in a proper way. And if they are very materialistic, I can say, well, when you go through this and come out of this hardship in your life, you will have much more compassion with other beings who have the same experience. And that is a meaning. That's the purpose. And they don't need a big worldview, but they can still see, okay, so even in that perspective, you could help people see meaning because they grow in their compassion when they go through hardship. And when then you have reincarnation, it gives a much broader meaning. Then the whole lifetime that is tough is also a big plus in the long-term perspective.
Yeah, you mentioned, Mary, if one could be frustrated because it takes a lot of time to learn how to play an instrument, for example. How could we imagine that or how does this worldview change us if we know that, okay, it takes a long time to learn to play the piano, but we have time enough, haven't we?
Yes.
Actually, the Japanese violin teacher, Shinichi Suzuki, he said, everybody can learn everything, but not at the same speed.
No, that's right.
And I thought that was so much in harmony with Martinus' worldview. And from my own experience from teaching small children to play the violin, then, well, he's right. But one person can spend a year learning to play a little piece that someone else picks up in 5 minutes. So there is an enormous difference, but then you need to have a logical explanation for the difference. Where does the difference come from? And then we get to this mystical term, talent. But I think one of the messages of this world picture is optimism, that Suzuki was right. Everyone can learn everything.
Sometimes it just takes some lifetimes.
It might take some lifetimes. And I think it can make one patient. And if you really are that interested, you will spend 3-4 lifetimes becoming a virtuoso at something.
Yes.
If you're really interested.
Otherwise, you might get bitter at the end of your life or in the middle of your life. Why didn't I do that? And I missed those opportunities.
Yes.
I have at least some friends who feel they have missed a lot of opportunities
in
our age now.
Okay.
But according to this healing view, also you can see that, okay, I didn't do that when I was 25 or that when I was 30, but in this perspective, everything fits together, doesn't it?
Yes.
You could see, okay, there was a purpose with that choice that I made.
And I think also you say maybe I should have done this in this lifetime. When you have this perspective in many lifetimes, I think it also helps getting older. I think it's easier to come to peace with that. That's what I reached in this lifetime, but the next time I have a dream of doing that. And I also meet people who have this reincarnation view, that when they are 80 years old, they start to learn a new language because they like that culture and they want to connect with it, or a new talent, because they know if I start to train this talent in this lifetime, it will be easier the next time. So,
and one thing that I think is I haven't seen anywhere else in talking about reincarnation is the whole idea of repetition that I think that Martinus talks about. I wonder if you could say something about what he means by this repetition. He talks about repeating the essence of previous lives until one is about 30. I wonder if you could comment on that. I haven't seen it anywhere else.
No, I think it has been a theory, not connected with reincarnation, but a theory that the process in the womb is describing the evolution. And that Martinus connects with that theory, you could say, but from his own experiences, and says that when we start with this one cell that are starting to divide, and then like a little, well, in fact, it starts like a little fish, the sperm swimming and reaching the egg, and then we see this process, and soon we are a little being there in the womb that could go in. It looks like it could go in many different directions. It's very similar to even birds or other mammals. And then later you see that this organism starts to come out from the womb, nearly like with the grips, like an ape or a monkey. And then gradually we see when it grows, it starts to go on 4 legs and then on 2 legs, and it starts to come language, and it starts to become aware of itself, and it is describing the evolution of our own evolutionary history. And then later you will see you go through different phases. So many people that have had children, they see, well, now my son is very busy with motorcycles or whatever, and then suddenly it's not interesting anymore. And I think you, Mary, have as a teacher in music, have seen an Alexander technique. You have seen musicians when they are ingenious with their instrument, but suddenly it's kind of satiated, and they want to do something else.
They want to do something else.
And they would become an engineer or whatever.
Yeah.
And that is also, Martinus says, where they have a repetition of different things they have learned in past lifetimes. And it's also with the moral development that you can go through more tough periods as a young person, but when you come up and are heading for being about 30 years old, then you can settle down in the top of your development from your past lifetime. It's very interesting to see that science, when they talk about the development of the brain in this lifetime, they have been saying that when 18 years old is full development, now 25, now it's about over 30 years old. So they put it up in that same age, as Martinus says, we repeat the past lifetimes up to 30 years old. And if we go backwards, you could say that it's the last lifetime maybe from 25 to 30, or the past life from before, from 22 to 25, and so it goes shorter and shorter and shorter. Therefore we see children can very quick change interests and their relation to friends and so on. But the more we grow up, it stabilizes, and when we are 30, we have often landed in a new, maybe also a new side of ourselves. For me, we started as a course center when I was 30 years old. That was a big shift in my life. So some people have a transformation in 30 when they become 30 and change their direction of life.
I wonder if child psychology could change with the understanding of this process of repetition, because well, for example, you meet sometimes parents who are really irritated by their children if they've invested a lot of money and energy in a particular interest.
Yes.
Supporting them, getting them lessons, maybe instruments or computers or whatever, and then they're suddenly not interested anymore.
Yes.
And the parents can get irritated and angry and upset.
Yes.
Because they don't see this process of repetition.
I think also when it comes to schooling and how to take care of children when they grow up, when they want to learn things, if you really let the individual learn from inside and out instead of outside and in, when they have these interests and they have a repetition of this focus they had some lifetimes ago, if they really get all the space and need and tools to repeat it in a good way, it will be much more integrated and a resource they can use. So I guess in the schools and in the future, we will see that the person is like a plant. You have to get it nourishment, and they will grow from the inside, and their resources will with flour, so to say, from the inside and out, instead of discipline and you have to sit there and take it in. It's kind of a violent way of educating people.
Yeah, it's amazing how much our view, especially of children, have changed in the last century. I think how much it's not perfect, but it's much. We have much more understanding and knowledge and love for children and how they develop. So I'm sure it will change. I was just thinking when you mentioned how we develop from the fetus, you say, to and how actually the brain also develops, and we know that our cognitive capacities develop and we develop language. So considering that consciousness is not created by the brain, one can also understand that we have so much knowledge about the brain, which seems to be a very, very complex organism with all the neurons and and we can measure all the electricity. And some of those researchers, like Pim van Lommel, they have proposed that we should have a more like a filter theory of the brain, that it works more like a filter.
Yes.
Do you think that's a good metaphor, the good model to understand? Because we still have the brain.
Yes.
And we know that if the brain is damaged, it can also influence our behavior.
Yes. I think it's a very good metaphor for the brain. And Martinus uses this example with the iceberg, that when we see each other, we only see the top of the iceberg. And if we have thousands of lifetimes behind us, we have gathered so much more talents and knowledge that could possibly come into this little body, this little brain. And I think it's also interesting to have that view if you look at the near-death experiencers, how they suddenly can make such a big shift.
Yeah.
It's like turning the iceberg, and another type of person comes up with other drives and so on.
Even other talents.
Even other
talents. Like there was one man that I read about who had a near-death experience, and he'd had nothing to do with music before.
Exactly.
After his near-death experience, he had to have a piano, and he had to have lessons. He had to start practicing.
And he composed music.
He became a composer and started giving concerts and stuff.
Yes. So, and I guess if with this perspective, it doesn't come from nothing. It doesn't come from the accident or the other experience. It comes because these talents that he has built in past lifetimes is suddenly available. Yeah. And I know also a brother of my mother, an uncle, who in the 60s, he was suddenly he wanted to do some artistic things. And he started to work with sculpturing. And he was so talented. But I mean, he started in the 60s. Where did that talent come from? So I guess in every person there is resources that we don't know.
Yeah.
And if we have that open mind when meeting people and when meeting all the students in the school, what can we awaken within you? How can we give the best circumstances for you to get to liberate your resources and talents? I think we will see quite another flourishing culture.
And perhaps also to make people aware of their own inner resources. It could be that if you feel, well, I just want to learn how to draw, and then you could say, that's a ridiculous thought, I'm old. Yeah. I mean, it could also be a way of listening to your inner voice and longing and follow them.
Follow your passion.
Follow your passion and trust inner resources. Yes. If we have that view that, yes, we have a functioning brain and personality, but there are many more resources. Martinus talks about night consciousness. And I don't think we mentioned it yet, but we actually think that we will have a series of talks with Sören about spiritual psychology here. So perhaps we'll come back to dreams, for example, as a resource. And we have psychologists like Carl Gustav Jung who used to talk about dreams. You mentioned Jung. Can we use these resources with more purpose? to give joy in everyday life. This knowledge that we have more resources than we know.
Yes, I think you could become more curious in a way of what to investigate in life, because you might meet things within yourself and your fellow beings that are, as we said, resources that that we haven't seen before. So I guess you become more open for these possibilities. And then, as we said, you also become more patient with practicing these things. And if we look out at the world scene today, it's a very dramatic world scene today. You also, I think, can maybe become more patient with the development of the world.
Yeah.
That is also part of the evolution, going through crises of different types. And now we have a very strong political crisis going on. And to think that that is a process where every involved will grow and will also become more aware of how not to do, for instance, in politics. And so I guess you get a totally other, more trustful way of looking at what's going on in the world. And you also learn to see that people dying in wars, for instance, they are not dying. It's their bodies that are dying. And they have these experiences with them. So, as Martinus says, some phrases, or we try to describe it in that way, that after each war, there will incarnate more and more people when they come back who are so satiated and fed up with war, so they become peaceful and want to create peace on earth. And so I think we get the long-term perspective that is easier to feel trust and be more hopeful when you see the development both with yourself but also when you look out in the world.
So war will really kill itself.
Yes.
Because people will reap the consequences of their own actions.
Yes.
I mean, there's terrible suffering going on in the world. There's thousands dying in wars.
Yes.
But, as you say, not really dead.
No.
They've just been sent to the spiritual worlds for a while, and they'll come back. And,
yes.
And the more one experiences of those painful things, the more one wants to create the opposite.
Yes. And that also makes all suffering more easy to handle. It doesn't mean that you just take it easy, but it's easy to handle within yourself. Also, if you see a person that goes into drugs and so on, you also see other people that are so skilled and wonderful of taking care of people with illnesses or drug problems and so on. Where do they come from? Well, they have been there.
Yeah.
So you get an optimistic view also when you look at the suffering, that type of suffering. And it's also interesting if you interview people children in Africa, what do they want to be? I want to be a doctor.
Yeah.
I want to be a teacher.
Yeah.
They often say these things.
Yes.
Because that's the light in their world.
Yeah.
So it creates a longing. Painful experiences creates a longing for something better.
Yeah.
And that is the longing of the world today, is for peace and so on. And that gives a very hopeful view, if you have reincarnation, to see that will grow. It will grow, even though we right now are in a very difficult situation.
Yeah, I sometimes think it's a bit like going to the dentist or the doctor or something, and they're going to do some sort of procedure that's going to hurt. And they tell you, well, this is going to hurt.
Yes.
And you can sort of be brave and put up with it, and you know it's going to last for 10 minutes or half an hour or 6 hours or whatever. But you know there's a loving purpose behind this little operation, whatever we're going to have done. And it's going to hurt, but you'll come out the other end of it.
Yes.
And I feel it's a bit like that with the world situation, that there's so much heavy surgery going on in people's consciousness.
Yes.
And I know Martinus, when he watched television or watched the news, he would say, this is how we see God creates consciousness. And he's really screwed up the tempo for the moment. Things are moving very, very fast.
Yes.
So, but if we imagine it as a kind of moral surgery in a way, that okay, there's an operation going on. Martinus emphasizes again and again that the purpose of our evolution is to become all-loving and all-knowing. And all-knowing means to know about the darkness, and how can you know about that if you never experience it? So,
it's a very trustful way of looking at life.
Yeah.
It gives you strength to, as you say, a dentist to handle different situations. So,
Yeah.
Exactly, and as you also write, at the same time with that positive world view, you also write that it's normal and natural, especially perhaps now in the world situation. We are recording this in January with dramatic events actually taking place in the world. We don't really know now what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But so those reactions that we might be, that we might feel stressed and be anxious, or we need to understand that we have those reactions. They are natural.
Yeah,
and we can try to find a balance. Have you got any good advice for people who do have these thoughts but still feel that it might be difficult to keep up the inner balance?
Yeah, absolutely. To know about purpose is very important. It helps us with spiritual science, for instance, and I hope that my writings also will help people with that. And another topic Martinus uses a lot of time to, and we will come back to that, I think, in episodes later, is the fact that we are never alone. So if we look down in Gaza and the children dying there, they are not alone. There's an angel, there's a spiritual world around them. As soon as they go out of the body, they will be helped, as we also hear from the near-death experiencers. And when you become more aware of that there's a spiritual world around us, and we're not alone, it becomes more and more natural to use the tools we know from religion with, for instance, prayer, to be connected with the divine in different ways, or meditation and so on. Because there's so much, you could say, life force and strength to get from this spiritual nourishment that we have also in the energy of the spiritual world. So to also ask for help to overcome these anxious thoughts, and ask to help to see it in a wider perspective, and of course also connect with friends and people you know that are heading with or interested in similar views, can also be a big help. So to be open for the spiritual world and for friends that have similar thoughts can be a big help in these challenging times. So, but I guess we'll come back to this aspect.
Yeah, well, I think we'll round up this session for today. But as you both have said, we will have some more podcasts on spiritual psychology based on Søren's new book, which is called Reincarnation, a logical and loving perspective on life. And we'll put a link in the show notes to where you can buy it.
Buy it as a physical book or an ebook.
Yeah.
Available around the world.
Yes. Thank you very much, Søren, for joining us, and thank you to Pernilla for co-hosting this podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.